And this is, see that?
No.
Carolyn?
That's the leaf.
You want to do a little intro?
Yeah. Okay, are we on go?
Yeah, it's recording. We'll just edit it later.
Okay, we're gathered over here at Emmylou's house, and it's the March the 3rd, 2005. And we have Hampton, Carolyn, and Jack, and Dane and myself and Emmylou. And what I thought we'd do is kind of talk a little bit about Emmylou's growing up, because she's told me all about it, and she's written down a lot of it. But I'm afraid, you know, we won't have it all if we don't get it out of her live. So we're going to ask her a few questions and then kind of let her talk about her youth and then meeting her husband and things like that. So I think Hampton has the first question.
When were you born?
I was born in 1913 on October the 16th. And that makes me 91.
91 or 92?
Yeah.
Wait, when were you born?
October the 16th, 1913. That's a long time ago. I was born in Galveston at 1622 Avenue H in a wonderful old house. I have a picture of it, but not in here. The picture's in the kitchen. This is my other house that I moved to when I was 8. And that was a real beautiful house.
Is that a picture?
It's a painting. I painted it. I painted my house. I don't know how I ever did that. But
It's
anyway.
good.
What was your question,
I
Carolyn?
got it.
You remember your question? What was it?
Do you have a pony?
About
Her question was, did you ever have a pony?
Well, I wanted a pony when I was 4 years old. And I always wanted a pony so bad. And I asked my daddy if I could have one. And he said, you have to wait until you're 8. 4 is too little to have a pony, and I couldn't take care of it when I was only 4. So, sure enough, on my 8th birthday, I went outside, and here this black man came leading my pony. And it wasn't a Shetland pony, but it was like a small horse. And it was black, and it had a little white star here, and I called it Black Beauty, because I had read that book. Have you ever read Black Beauty?
No.
Oh,
Was it like my horse?
It was
Bigger?
a pony, but it wasn't as big as a horse. But it wasn't a Shetland pony. So I was so thrilled, and from that time on, I went everywhere on my pony. I went to my music lesson, I went to my art lesson, I rode on the beach, because I lived in Galveston. We had lots of beaches, 30 miles of beach. And so I was a really happy camper. And that's about all I'd say.
Where did you live on Galveston?
In Galveston, I first lived 1622 Avenue H, which is now called Ball Street. And there's a picture of the house in the kitchen I'll show you later. It was a wonderful house. And I lived there until I was 8. Everything happened when I was 8. And then we moved to the big house, that house, that was on 25th and Broadway. And it was by that statue in the center of the city, catty corner from the Seeley House. And I was real happy there. It was such a great house.
Well, tell us about, I mean, maybe we're skipping a little bit, but I guess where did you go to college? Didn't they send you off?
I went to a girls' college, a junior college in Nashville, Tennessee, called Ward Belmont. And it was only for girls. And I guess it was so old-fashioned, but they were very strict. And if you wanted to go to town, you had to wear a black dress and black shoes and wear gloves. I mean, I guess you could say it was sort of a finishing school. But they also had a wonderful stable with some very very fine horses, and they offered equitation as something you could take as a sport. So I immediately voted for that. And I told my mother I wanted to take equitation and learn how to ride English. And
Before that, you had really not ridden English? You had just
no.
kind of Western on your pony and
Yeah.
stuff?
So Miss Carling was the teacher, and I did real well, and I won the silver cup for the best rider in the school.
Wasn't there somebody real famous, a movie star or something? You went to?
Minnie Pearl, you know Minnie Pearl?
Oh, yeah, on Hee Haw? The Western? Yeah.
Was she a
Country Western?
comedian?
Yeah.
She went to the same school.
Did y'all?
And she was always funny, even back then.
Bye.
When people would, if you saw a crowd of people laughing, she was always in the middle. You know, I'll never forget that. And
Okay, well, tell us about now then where Bill came into the picture.
well, I met Bill in my own kitchen, which was sort of nice. I was having a party for a friend who was getting married, and I had this friend named Sam Symington, whom I had invited to my party. And he called and he said, "Do you mind if I bring this friend of mine who's just driven into town?" And well, of course I said, "Bring him." So I met him in my own kitchen. He was passing the drinks, and he was so handsome and kind. He came back. Let's see, he had a temporary job. He was really young, and he had gone to Kentucky to live with his rich aunt, Emma Hagen. And while he was there, he worked for American Tobacco Company, and his job was to sweep out the barn, I think. But anyway, it was sort of it was a job where you had a lot of time off, you know. So he drove down to Texas from there, and the only person he knew in Texas, he said, was Sam. And Sam was living in Galveston, working in Texas City. So Sam brought him to my party. So that's where I met him.
Well, did you kind of know right away you liked him, or you weren't sure? And you knew he was real handsome, huh?
Yeah, and then he had to go back to his job in Kentucky, but during the summer he had a 2-week vacation, so he came back to Galveston, and he had this little old Ford convertible, and we played on the beach, and we just had such a good time. And
So you were pretty sure he was the right one.
yeah, I was knocked over like everything.
Hey,
All
look.
right, can we take a break?
Yep.
Okay, Jack.
All right.
Real quiet now.
All right. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Go ahead, Carol.
Have you ever lived on a farm?
I lived on a farm for 4 years
Where?
outside of Warden, Texas. And my Bill wanted to grow alfalfa so bad. He wanted to be a farmer so bad. We couldn't afford to buy the land, so we rented it, 200 acres. And there had a terrible house on it, just a little old nigger shack that we tried to fix up. And I had 2 children then. I had Bambi and Edie. And everything was fine for a while, but the house was way back from the paved road, and we had this driveway in that was just dirt. So when it rained, the dirt became mud, and we couldn't use it. I mean, the car would just sink down in this mud, and so we had to leave the car out on the road and walk in. And they were really very hard times. The house was so awful, and Bill planted his 200 acres of alfalfa. It was bottom land, the kind you had to have for alfalfa, he said. He had studied a book about it and talked to the county agent. Well, the alfalfa came out, it just looked gorgeous. But then it rained so much that it all died. And so then the poor man had to get a job. And I couldn't get one because I had 2 kids to take care of. So he went over to the Texas Gulf Sulphur Company that was right close to where we lived. And he got a job at this Texas Gulf Sulphur. It was the only sulphur mine in Texas. And he had no trouble ever getting jobs. But then I noticed when he came home, all my silver turned black. So I'll always remember, because he had those fumes on him, you know, from the sulphur mine. And that was something.
Stop it, just ants were born.
All right, go ahead.
Go.
Well, your grandmother is Edie.
Yeah. Let him ask you.
Where did your grandmother live? And your aunt?
Where did what?
Huh?
Ask where Mom Ed was.
Ask him where Mom Ed was born.
Where was Mom at?
She was born in Baltimore, Maryland, in Johns Hopkins Hospital, where my husband's brother was a resident. In obstetrics. So I got the grand treatment there. I stayed 2 weeks with my baby and went home with a nurse, and I mean, everything was so different then. So,
Who was your baby?
hmm,
Who was your baby? What was his name?
Edie. Edie was born in Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland,
That's Mom Ed.
because we hadn't moved back to Texas.
How about Bambi and Daisy? Where were they born?
Yeah.
Well, they were born, I know Daisy was born when we lived in Wharton.
Maybe Bambi was born in Gallup? No?
No, she must have been born in Baltimore too.
Yeah, she must.
So, that was so long ago, I don't know. That farm, we just sold out. We sold everything, all the equipment, the animals, the dairy herd, everything we had. And I went back to my mother, who lived in this beautiful house in Galveston. But Bill, although he wasn't eligible to go to war, we were having World War II, but it was almost over. But he wanted to do his part, so he volunteered to work for the Red Cross as a field director, and he trained for 6 months, I think. And then he went to Germany. He was sent to Germany. Well, most of his job was they were deploying the troops because the war was over, but they still had to get all those soldiers home. So that was what his job was. And he felt like he had done his part by doing that. He was gone a year, and I had gone. We hadn't established a home. So I just took my kids and moved back to my mother's. What else could I do?
And then he came back and y'all came to Houston?
Yeah, he came back and got a job with a guy named Dal Zabolio, who was a builder and a lumberman. So we got a good job there, and we were able to find. We lived at that little house on Memorial Drive, 6214 Memorial Drive. At that time, Memorial was only a dirt road. But we moved in and the house was too little for us, but it was all we could afford. It had 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, and we were 5 people. But we managed real well and were very happy because our neighbors were young sort of struggling, and we made good friends with them and enjoyed that part of our life very much.
And then
Well, when my mother died in the 50s, I inherited a lot of money, including her beautiful home, and I knew we weren't going to live in Galveston. So we sold this house and used the money to build this house. So we were able to I was able to make the down payment, which I think was only $10,000, but at that time it was quite a lot. And then Bill made all the payments. So together, we were able to build this house.
Huh.
And it was specially built by a lumberman. You know, the paneling, he was a lumberman. The beautiful paneling and all. And we raised our 3 kids here. It has 4 bedrooms and 3 baths.
How old were you when you
All right, well, I
got
saw
this
George
house?
and Georgia, got them all.
How old?
How old were you when you got
Yeah,
this
we
house?
didn't get there.
Oh, I guess I was 40-something. I don't know exactly.
We're interviewing Edie's brother.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a whole lot more that we'd like to ask Emmy Lou, but we need to go get the hamburgers. You know, we gotta have our priorities.
Everybody starved.
But one thing that she talked to me about is that she had a real tragedy in her life and really in her family's life, and that she lost her sister. But the way her parents managed the situation is what I'd like for her to talk about.
Yeah, I was 12 years old and my sister Daisy was 8. And my mother and daddy had gone to Europe because he was in the shipping business and he had to go see about that. And I don't think they quite left yet. Well, anyway, they left us, me and my sister, in the charge of my grandmother. And so my sister was coming home from school. She went to a little private school, and I think she was 8 years old. And as she was crossing the street, this truck came and struck her and killed her instantly. So it was just a terrible time, and my poor grandmother, you know, she couldn't have helped it, but my parents rushed home, and mostly I remember the flowers. That house was just filled with flowers, and today there's a beautiful window in my church down there, Trinity Church, in her memory, and it's a stained glass window, and it's on the left as you go in. And that taught me something about forgiveness. They were not resentful. They didn't hate the truck driver. They knew he couldn't help it. And they turned around and gave this beautiful memorial to her. So that taught me a lot about forgiveness, which is important in everyone's life.